Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining our Column EDC Coffee Chat, Coffee with Colleen. We're really happy to have you join us today. Thanks for spending some of your morning with us. And we are really excited and happy to have our friends, Ned Floeter and Regan Nichols, join us this morning to talk about the exciting news and the project that they are leading the Sequim School District around a career tech education center of excellence. So they've got exciting news to share, and we just like for this to be interactive. So Ned and Regan will share information about the project. And if you have any questions, you can either raise your hand or put it in the chat, and I'm sure Ned will be able to see it and answer your questions. But in the meantime, if you'll keep yourself on mute so we don't inadvertently pick up any background noise, that would really be great. So with that, Ned and Regan, if you guys want to take it away, the floor is yours.
Well, first of all, I want to just say thanks to everybody who've turned out today for this kind of an update on where we are with our project. And for us to get the full measure of that, I really think just stepping back in time just a little bit and giving you a snapshot of what's occurred in the last 3 years. This will be the start of my fourth year as the CTE director for Sequim. I was hired initially to support both Crescent and Forks and Sequim my first year. And really the first thing I did for Sequim when I came on board was I did really a survey of needs, facility needs. What does the program need to really become more relevant for our students and for our industries in the local area? And as I was conducting this, put together just a snapshot of the resources that we would probably need going forward, the level of facilities and their capability currently, and what they would need to do going forward to meet these requirements. And as we put this together, a few people showed up in my office, Kay Gagnon from the Rotary Club, and she quickly connected me with Colleen and Lori and Matt Hewish. And this team began to coalesce around these ideas about what do we want from our CTE program going forward, and how will it impact our community and the region in order to keep our most valuable export of Clallam County, which is our labor market. And so in putting together this project, this was really a team effort and kind of started it with that. And the nice thing about CTE programs across the state is that we're required to build coalitions with labor and industry, our school community, and nonprofits to help us guide the program going forward. And we get to meet with those coalitions throughout the year, generally twice, once in October, once in April, but also throughout the year, we have advisory meetings. And that was a good platform to begin to launch this vision of what is it to become a CTE center of excellence. And the first thing we had to address was, if we're going to be using 21st century skill sets and 21st century equipment, we have to have buildings that support that. And if you take a look at the Sequim School District, a lot of our buildings are dated, and really we've asked these buildings to do something 60 years after their construction that they're not really qualified to do. And this is why this CTE Center of Excellence, and particularly the building project, has really taken hold. And early on in this, we got good support from Senator Wellman and Representative Theringer and the county and the city, because they could also see the need for this, and how we go about getting these funds would require their partnership. And also, CTE is required to partner with our community colleges. And significantly, Peninsula College has stepped up and has become a real partner in this process, because we're really preparing students in high school for labor market ready jobs, industry ready jobs. But we also partner with the college because there are avenues of greater skill set that they can provide. And so we have this kind of a baton passing mentality between the high school level education and then the college itself. And our goal.
So Ned,
Yeah, go
very
ahead.
quickly, there's a question in the chat. What is CTE? So I think we got to make sure that we talk to the community and that may not know the lingo of education. So anyway, what is CTE?
Well, CTE is career, the acronym really stands for Career Technical Education. And within a high school, in fact, middle school to high school, we begin to expose students to career technical education pathways. For instance, welding and automotives and kind of industry trades are part of that core of what a career technical education might include. But our program here at Sequim, we have 66 different career technical education programs that begin in 7th grade and culminate in high school. And these pathways have 6 programs of study that we can exploit. They are in the biomedical sciences or health program of study, the agri-science, agribusiness program of study, industry trades, technology programs of study, STEM, which is your science, technical, engineering, and mathematics programs of study, skills such as automotives, mechanics, these kinds of are in another program of study. And then we also have family and consumer sciences and future business programs of study as well. And so CTE really encompasses education towards developing students on a pathway who maybe are not thinking a 4-year education post high school, but are thinking either entry into the trades right away, and so we're preparing them for apprenticeships and internships, or extending that learning into a 2-year program at one of the local community colleges where they get greater fidelity on these trades. And that's really our focus of CTE. We are one component of a comprehensive education opportunity for students. They still have pathways for that 4-year in the high school. They still have other kinds of opportunities. We haven't taken away anatomy or chemistry or physics, but CTE is a component of that comprehensive education plan for a student. So I hope that addresses that question. If there's a follow-on, I'd take that.
Yeah, so there's sometimes AP CTE classes as well, as I understand, advanced placement. And it really is about working with your hands, right? For kinesthetic learners.
Yeah, I think a lot of our students, have that capability of taking theoretical design and putting into practical design. And so, for instance, we do have advanced placement, and computer science is one of them. We also have advanced placement course that we're teaching in environmental sciences. The difference between that and an AP course, say in AP biology or AP physics, would be that we're far more into the tactile piece of that, the practical exploitation of that in industry.
Great, thanks.
I see this question here from Michael. Do I see 7th or 8th graders reluctant to pursue a particular track of study? I don't think they're reluctant. I think they're, right now we have to do a better job of informing our students and partnering with our students in ways that assist them on the tracks that they're interested in. And so what we've tried to do, and this is where a lot of our growth in these last 3 years has come to our CTE program. When I took over CTE, we had approximately, and this is an acronym I'll use, we had about 200 students in full-time students enrolled in CTE program. And that doesn't mean there were 200 students. We actually have about 800 students enrolled, but when you break it down to a funding matrix, it's called full-time equivalent. And so we had about 200 students. Today we have just under 300 students enrolled, full-time equivalent students enrolled in CTE. So we've increased our program by 30%. And a lot of that growth happened in the middle school. And the reason we pushed down there is because it's almost too late for a student to get to that industry grade if we start them in 9th grade with basic skill sets. And so we're really developing in our 7th and 8th grade programs CTE opportunities for these kids to experience. We've added a biomedical sciences program there, digital media program there. This year we approved an introduction to industry trades in the 7th and 8th grade. And as kids begin to see what's available to them, you know, that 7th and 8th grade experience is like a buffet table, right? You get to try lots of different things. And by the time they hit 9th grade, they have a clear understanding of what they really want to do with respect to a career post-high school. And there's another thing that the state has done over the last several years, which helps those 7th and 8th graders, which is called creating a high school and beyond plan. And this is a living document that follows them from 7th grade all the way through their senior year, that they can look at, that they can build about what they're going to do post-high school. And I think these kinds of components that we've added into Career Tech Ed is allowing our 7th and 8th grade students greater exposure and therefore greater choice as they enter into their high school years.
Great. Dr. Maxwell, go ahead. You have your hand raised.
Yeah, I figured instead of typing, I'll just respond verbally. That makes a lot of sense, Ned. And it really resonates from our experience, you know, with the healthcare workforce pipeline. We've come to appreciate that it begins in the high schools, middle schools. I mean, that's where, if you're going to generate an interest for future pipeline to healthcare, you got to get them interested at a very early age. So I'm really pleased to what you're saying resonates with me. So,
and I'd like to speak to that specifically in the biomedical sciences piece. We've added 2 programs in the middle school, and we have 3 programs in the high school. And another part of the CTE world is that it's not just a class that kids are taking. They also have opportunity to be involved in a leadership component called a Career Tech Student Organization. Many of you are familiar with Future Farmers of America. That's one of the larger Career Tech student organizations. But for instance, in biomedical sciences, we have what's called HOSA, Health Occupation Services Association, and DECA. And those 2 CTSOs really allow students the leadership components, the communicative and soft skills that they wouldn't necessarily get in a 50-minute class or a 2-hour block. And so they go and compete across the state with respect to that. And what we've done to support that from just the Sequim area, you might be familiar, Doctor, with an anatomage table where we have digitized corpses, real human corpses digitized into a table that allows students to perform full anatomy on the human body. And that's something that we purchased last year with a Commerce Department grant that we received. It's a very expensive component. It's $80,000. We also supplemented it with 4 anatomage tablets that students can work in the work groups at their table. And this year we got 5 computers called Z-Space computers that allow you to actually take the human heart in a 3-dimensional holographic form and pull it from the screen and work with it in a 360-degree rotation as you open it up. And those are very expensive computers. They run about $5,000 a piece. And they don't only apply to biomedical sciences, they also have a component for automotives and agri-science. So they have software that allows you to do this in the 3-dimensional realm. So that's some of the technology that we've been able to resource in these last 3 years. Most recently, we received a grant called a Career Prep Launch Grant that allowed us to purchase a $110,000 commercial driver's license simulator that allows a student to work in a cockpit that trains them on 25 different heavy equipment machines to include graders, skidders, loaders, log cranes, dozers, 5-ton trucks, dual axle, buses, and even has a driving component for, driver's ed. And that's another very expensive piece of kit, but that thing is a game changer because kids work in a 360-degree virtual simulation in the cockpit of a simulator that literally moves as they move the vehicle. And we have a teacher that we sent to get OSHA 10 certified, and that teacher can now certify people off of that equipment in OSHA 10 training. And we partnered with the college most recently to be a part of the Recompete grant. And our piece of that was to purchase 3 more of those simulators and bring them into our facility so that not only can our students experience that, but we can also have people from our community who need those certifications come in and be a part of that. And what's cool about having 4 of those simulators is they can all work together in the same virtual space. So, doctor, you might be on a 5-ton truck and I might be in a loader in that virtual space, and I can load into your truck. And if I happen to hit your truck, the cockpit moves just as if you've been hit. So there's a lot of reality that comes with that. And one of the things we want to showcase this October is how that simulator works. And we'd invite you guys to come and see that and see some of the technology that we've been able to bring in to this program in a very short period of time.
Very cool. Just have to learn how to do heart surgery from a truck now.
Yeah. Well, it'd be moving, I think. But
Yes.
that's, again, these are the things that we're trying to expose our students to, but we're also trying to position ourselves not for the moment, but for 5 and 10 years out. We have to have a future focused mindset because things are changing so quickly with the advent of artificial intelligence. Right now, people have jobs that are working virtual simulators, and they're actually connected to foreign countries doing drone work through those simulators in that country. And so we have to, even though we have to make sure that we're really good at the fundamentals, the blocking and tackling of career skill sets, we also have to have a mindset for moving forward and what that looks like. One of the things we did over the last 2 years is we've really increased the capability of our automotive program. If you were to walk into our automotive shop, it is resourced with equipment that you would go into any service organization and see that same equipment. So that's expensive equipment we have to buy. And one of the reasons we want the building is because often that equipment is not designed to fit in a 60-year-old structure. And so as we improve and modernize the things that the students are exposed to, we have to have a building that can support that going forward. And that includes everything from HVAC systems to hazmat control to the power and the sewage that has to be brought into that space. Anybody else with questions?
Doesn't look like yet. Go right ahead. Keep on going.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
no, B Brown, sorry. B Brown has raised their hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, I got a question from John
Bo.
Temple
Yeah.
about psychological testing. No, we don't. I think one of the things that we do expose students to is the industry grade exams for specific certifications, which definitely identify some of their aptitudes or where we need to do a better job of instructing. But no, we don't have aptitude tests for entering into CTE at this point, and I wouldn't even know how we could bring those in from a legality sense.
Go ahead, Bo.
I did. Bo Brown, North Olympic Healthcare Network. Hey, this is really exciting stuff. I'm wondering, will this program be made available beyond the Sequim school district?
Well, that's certainly our intent. One of the partnerships that we want to drive with Peninsula College and Mia's team there in workforce development is to ensure that on the weekends and the after-school hours, that we create an off-site type of campus for Peninsula College for use of these spaces. And you know, there's still, I mean, that's the vision. Certainly, we have to work out the particulars to that, but we are both leaning forward into that vision because honestly, we really want to see folks who are in our region have access to certificates and capabilities. And I think about the people who have left high school, maybe didn't get a high school diploma, or maybe didn't get a certificate, but don't have a desire for a 2-year program. One of the things that are really kind of cutting edge in today's post-high school education is certification programs. And so one of the things that, even though the college will play an integral part of that, we also need to ensure that we partner with local labor and industries to make sure that we're on the right track for those certificates. And I think about Joel Burson's team there at Airflow, you know, and he's got an incredible facility there, and the HVAC systems. We really want to play a part in supporting these kinds of industries post high school. And so we have some work to do in terms of how that actually looks, but that is a center to our vision for using this. And when we think about this term CTE Center of Excellence, sometimes it's easy to just focus that on a building, right? Because that really is what we're in the middle of right now, is getting this building built. But when I think of CTE Center of Excellence, I think of it from a regional perspective. I want Sequim and the region to be known and have the capability for being a center of excellence when it comes to career tech education, whether it's in high school or post-high school. And I think this kind of mindset puts us in more than just, hey, we got a building built. Well, that's not the end of the story. We have a lot of work to do beyond that building getting built, which is creating these real viable partnerships with industry and creating other capabilities that are out there. Because we took initially our goal was to have a 20,000 square foot building. And that would have been about a $15 to $16 million build. And we were offered this local community projects grant, but we had to keep it within a $5 million scope. So we really had to pare down what our initial plan was. So we phrased it as a phase one. Hey, we get a 10,000 square foot building this year, maybe in 3 years, we'll get another 10,000 square foot building to continue this process. And really, you know, even though 3 years seems like a long time, when I think about it, this is the end of my 3rd year at Career Tech Ed, and here's where we're at. So a lot happened in those 3 years based on the teamwork that we were able to bring into this, and the communication between legislative process, community involvement, nonprofit involvement, the educational leadership here in our district. I think those are the things that going forward, when I think of CTE Center of Excellence, I'm thinking about it from a comprehensive. We are the center of excellence for this kind of education and training. Other questions?
Someone asked, what is CTSO?
CTSO is Career Tech Student Organizations. And every CTE program, whether here at Sequim or Port Angeles, whatever, if you're going to run a CTE program that is funded by the state, you have to have Career Tech Student Organizations. And there are basically 8 affiliated CTSOs. They are in the Future Business Leaders of America, FFA, Technical Skills Association, Skills USA, DECA, which is a service organization, HOSA, which is Health Occupational Services Organization. Family Consumer Sciences is another CTSO. And what the CTSO does is it's the leadership component. Kids will, say for instance, Future Farmers of America has about 60 or 70 kids enrolled in their program. In that CTSO, and that affords those kids opportunities to learn the soft skills of leadership and business, of everything from job interviews competing in their specific skills, agri-science competitions, speaking competitions, interview competitions, leadership competitions that they participate in. You think about it, it's one thing to be skilled at at say an agri-science industry like, you know, forestry or so forth. It's another thing to have that soft skill that supports your ability to communicate what you know and to work with others. And CTSOs really come around the student in a way that's holistic. And these are kind of expensive for us to actually facilitate. When, you know, we sent 26 kids to Spokane for the Health Occupational Services Association, CTSO, for their competition. And that's from 8th grade through high school. And you can imagine sending 8th graders to Spokane. That's a heart attack. And I didn't get this gray hair for nothing. And so we also have to have chapter leadership in those CTSOs. And so our teachers, they get a little extra stipend because they're spending numerous amounts of hours post high school day working with these kids in these leadership conferences. And we also have parent volunteers and community volunteers who come alongside us. I think of our robotics competition that our Skills USA, excuse me, our Technical Skills Association does. We have a couple of really good guys that super know about robotics, and they come in and they're a part of that CTSO framework. And so the kids are exposed to not just teachers, but community members who are actually working in those industries through CTSOs. And so they are a huge component, and they're required. The advantage of running a CTE program or a CTE course of study at a school district is that we receive extra funding for that program. You know, so for instance, let's say a typical student would receive, you know, for the state, a 1.0 funding for a full-time equivalency. A CTE full-time equivalencies are about 1.25. So we get about 25% more funding for every CTE full-time equivalent student we have into our district. Now, those monies have to be used primarily for CTE programs because those programs are expensive. It's expensive to buy a CNC machine, plasma cutter. That thing's going to run you about $50,000 to get one of the ones that are right on top of it. So that's important that we keep our full-time equivalent number up so we can afford these other kinds of things. And how we do that is by creating interest in the student mindset and the mind space by offering things that are not only relevant to getting a job post-high school and one with livable wages, but offering something that's appealing to students to get them in that CTE pathway. Doctor, you had another question?
No, I think John Temple responded to Dr. Maxwell's question. But Lori asked, can you share the funding from OSPI and the exciting news about the additional funding just recently received, the next steps for the project?
Yeah, you know, we applied for, and really this was a huge team effort. I mean, I hate being the center of gravity, but I guess I'm the mouthpiece for this. But this is not a Ned Floeter thing. This was Steve Theringer, it was EDC, it was Rotary Club, it was folks working the legislative process is well beyond my scope of capability. So we applied back in, I think it would have been February, kind of last minute. We got this application capability that came into us from Representative Theringer's office. Hey, apply for the local community projects grant. We took our 20,000 square foot business plan and pared it down to 10,000 square foot so we could meet the parameters of the grant. And we were able to do that in a pretty short amount of time based on the work that folks like Dale Jarvis, Richard Parks, Kay's team did from the Rotary Club with us. And we were able to coalesce all that into the grant. Waited a fairly short period of time because, you know, the legislative piece had to kind of work itself out. And I think I was talking with you, Colleen, and you said, hey, guess what? You received your $5 million grant. I mean, it kind of came to us very quietly. I immediately called Superintendent Nichols and I said, woohoo! Who would have thought it, you know, but it came through, and that was really just the amount of constituencies that really supported this effort to Representative Theringer's office is what moved this from a wish to an actual thing.
It
And
was,
so-
yeah, it, just to be clear, it wasn't a grant, it was part of the capital budget. And every year, every district gets a certain amount of money for their district and for capital projects. And so there was 5 million put into our district for this particular project.
Correct.
And, you know, and then keep on going. So you got that 5 million, which was pretty exciting. And then,
well, I mean, again, success breeds success. I want to really thank the Sequim Gazette. They've done a really good job of articulating our position going forward, the ups and the downs of it, because we've had a lot of ups and downs with this process, as most of these things do. And their communication out to the public really has excited members of our community. And particularly, we received $1 million donation pledge from one of our citizens, Miss Ramponi, which is just super exciting. I mean, because the way these budget things have to be spent is you have to literally have kind of a bank. And then when you, like, say, for instance, we have a design feature we have to push forward and get that completely done through an architectural process and, you know, the environmental impacts and such, and that costs money. Well, these extra donations that have come in, this $1 million, is going to give us that capability to purchase these things that need for the building and then reimburse through this $5 million grant, which is critical to going forward. As you, again, have been, if you've stayed in touch with what the Sequim Gazette's been reporting about our school, like many schools across the state, you know, we're also at a time of budget shortfalls, and we had to balance our budgets this year. So when you tack on a $5 million bill that you might not have the money up front to really address, these kinds of things are critical. And so Ms. Ramponi's very gracious donation to the school has been, it really has taken us into the goal line here, and has put us in a great footing for this project.
right. So Jim Hagwood has a really good question, and I think it's clarifying the difference between what are CTE classes and skill centers. And his question is, are CTE classes 3-hour blocks, and do they conflict with graduation requirements?
No, typically they're not 3-hour blocks. I mean, you could probably design them for that, I suppose, but currently at Sequim we don't necessarily have that.
And that's they had that in the skill center,
correct,
which taught career tech education courses at the skill center.
Right. And again, one of the challenges of you know, for instance, a skills center, I realized that Port Angeles had one several years ago, and one of the challenges of partnering with a skills center from, say, an out of district piece is just the transportation time to get there and back again. That takes out of a school day for those students, and that's just one challenge. And so skill centers, you know, like for instance, West Sound Tech at Bremerton, they have a very, very comprehensive skills center that really supports the shipyard down there and the other businesses in that local area. I wouldn't quite qualify our CTE center here at this point as a skills center because it's probably not going to be initially comprehensive enough. It will address many of the concerns that we have locally, which is construction trades, heavy equipment trades, those kinds of things. And that's why this is a phase one. I think as you go forward with, you know, other phases to this project, you could potentially come to that point where you say this is a skills center. But CTE does not conflict. CTE classes do not conflict with graduation requirements. In fact, they support it. Our CTE programs here in Sequim, a student has to complete at least one CTE credit for graduation requirements. Many of our CTE classes here have what are called dual credit equivalencies. So for instance, our automotive tech 2 program has a science equivalency assigned to it. So a student can actually get a general science credit by attending that program, and also a CTE credit in that program. So we are collaborative with our graduation requirements. In fact, the state a few years back created what's called CTE graduation pathways. One of the challenges across the state with many students is their ability to pass the high stakes testing that allows them to graduate, the Smarter Balance Assessment, when they hit their junior year. If they don't pass that, they don't meet a specific graduation requirement. However, we can supplant that by having that student having completed 2 one-year courses in CTE in the same program of study. So for instance, we have a student that really isn't interested in going to a 4-year college immediately after high school, but is really interested in, for instance, welding. Well, we have a welding 1, it's 180 hours, 1 full credit, and a welding 2, it's another 180 hours. They are preparatory CTE programs. A student completes that, they've completed a pathway towards graduation, and they no longer are required to pass the Smarter Balance Assessment as their gateway. And we also have partnerships with Peninsula College, Olympic College, and Yakima Valley College. For instance, in our welding program, Peninsula grants us 32 credits for completion of welding 1 and welding 2. So that student can literally enroll those credits while they're in high school and get those credits done through Peninsula College and the teacher that's facilitating that class. And we have 22 programs right now that are dual credit aligned with community colleges.
So I want to give a little bit of background on skill centers. We did some research working with Senator Wellman, the K-12 chair, and in the Senate, and to be able to qualify for funding as a skill center, you have to have a minimum of 150 students enrolled, full-time equivalent students enrolled in 3 different programs, CTE programs. And as Ned said, they have 66, so different programs. And so it's really hard. You have to have a critical mass of students to be able to meet that threshold of those 450 full-time equivalent students. And if you don't have that, you don't qualify for any funding from the state for a skills center to be built. The only way Port Angeles was able to qualify for a skills center is by saying that all 5 school districts would be feeding the skills center in Port Angeles. And then what ended up happening is, because of the transportation requirements mostly, and also funding issues, they just couldn't get enough kids in the program there. So that was the biggest driver of why that ended up shutting down. And so what is frustrating to me, and what I've shared with a lot of the legislators, that the system is rigged against rural communities, because we can't access this incredible pot of money from the state to build a skills center if you don't have that critical mass of 450 full-time equivalent students signed up in just 3 different programs. And if you do, then all the money's there available to you. And also now, because a lot of those skill centers are 20 years old now, they're accessing another 10, 20 million to upgrade their skill centers. And again, rural communities, we don't get to access any of that. So I think that whole system that does not allow for rural communities to have these incredible educational facilities is a big reason, I think, or a driving factor why our rural communities struggle. And so that's something that we've been talking about at the Colleen EDC to the legislators. And Lisa realized that, and so she wanted to advocate for, you know, funding for our community because she came to visit the school district and saw, you know, in comparison to Kirkland and Mercer and all these different really well-off school districts with these incredible facilities in Moses Lake and you name it, across the state. There's 295 school districts across the state. And, you know, so many of them just have first class, amazing facilities. And then, you know, she saw Sequim's and it was frankly pretty pathetic. But we also had really excited teachers with terrific programs, and we had business owners saying, if these skill sets could be taught, I would be hiring at, you know, $24 an hour to start. And so she really felt passionate about trying to help us. And she was a big pusher for getting us some funding. So, you know, there's a great question here from Paul Gottlieb. Are there opportunities for Port Angeles and the West End students to participate in the program?
Well, certainly, we do share students between our districts. One of the challenges, though, for instance, for the Skills Center, you know, if, you know, and I think one of the other things that isn't well understood in our community, when you send a student to another school for training, that school, the sending school, reduces their funding. And so, for instance, if I'm sending 100 students to a skills center, that's 100 students that I'm not receiving funding for, and I'm hollowing out my own programs in my local district. And that is a challenge when you have these partnerships. So certainly Port Angeles, if they felt like a student would benefit, there are these collaborative partnerships, and maybe Superintendent Nichols can address that at a better level than I can, because I don't make necessarily those decisions. Those are usually left to the building principal of the high school or the middle school that would be sharing that. But there is a way to do that, but it's sometimes not equitable for the sending school from a fiduciary perspective. Did I address that well enough, Regan?
Just playing
Yes,
with my
thank you.
mute button there. Yes, quite frankly, we've discussed the school choice mechanism between Port Angeles, for instance, and Sequim. It's quite active, but not only is there a funding issue, Port Angeles has been working very hard to improve and add options to their CTE programs as well. And they're very active in that. They've opened a student led business model with a cafe, for instance. So I know that they have students that are really turning towards some of those programs, but we'll always be open to the school choice. The other issue, of course, is transportation. We have many students who do go to Running Start programming at Peninsula College, for instance, from Sequim, and that is a travel distance. And so you do lose time in your school day. So that is also another consideration for many students in high school leaving their campuses.
Great, thanks, Regan.
I saw that Dale Jarvis wanted to address.
He has a really good question. Can you talk about how the CTE might be impacted by the new recompete funding coming to our community?
Well, we already have worked with Peninsula College, Susie Ames's team, as a part of their grant writing. They included Sequim School District in $350,000 of that towards these commercial driver's license simulators, which will bring us to we have one right now. We're planning to have 3 more based on the recompete grant. I think also, though, there's some ancillary capability through the recompete grant. One of the things that we want to do as we move forward is create a better partnership with our Jamestown Scum tribal entities and bring them into this conversation with us. We've had many conversations with them to date. But, you know, again, until you actually can see what's going on in the program itself, and actually envision how it's going to impact your organization for a positive and not a negative effect, I think that the Recompete grant has highlighted just how many of our affiliated organizations in the region, local community, Jefferson and Clallam, that could be impacted by this. And I'm thinking right at the top of my head, the Habitat for Humanity piece that we really want to be a part of in a much more significant way with our student population. So I think that the Recompete really has just kind of broadened our lens a little bit. Certainly it's going to impact us from a fiscal perspective with the grant monies and the purchasing of this equipment, which we will do this year, and we'll stage that equipment in a classroom until the building is up. But we intend to have a full up virtual simulation room as a part of this building, which I think is, and again, that's future focus right there. I have a 20-year military career behind me several years ago, and I can remember going into the simulator trainers for the various aircraft. And that was so impressive then. 20 years forward, I mean, it's really impressive when you pop into a simulator. And so I think that work and that the graciousness of Peninsula College, including us in that, is going to be a benefit for both entities.
Great. So I think we've covered most of the information about the advances that we've been able to pursue. You know, with Port Angeles having Peninsula College there, it's really nice that some of these resources will be placed on in the Sequim area just for transportation reasons. And the fact that I know years ago when I tried to get the Sequim School District to partner with the college on some things, there wasn't a lot of uptake. And you know, I've just been so pleased that change in culture has happened to figure out ways on how to partner together to serve the mission and not so focused on the institution itself.
Sure.
Dale, you had a question or a comment?
Yes, I've only lived here in the area for 5 years now. And that gives me an opportunity to compare what's going on in the North Olympic Peninsula to other places I've worked all around the country. And I'm really kind of blown away by the broader vision that the visionaries in this community have for making this a stronger community for families and people having living wage jobs. And Colleen, this is a question for you. Could you talk a little bit about how you see the CTE fitting into the broader vision that folks are working on for making this a stronger community?
Well, you know, I guess my first thought is that, you know, in order to help our community, we have to help the people that live here that are currently struggling. And those people that live here don't have a 4-year computer science degree or something along those lines. I hear often like, why aren't we attracting more tech workers? And why aren't we attracting more tech companies? And I'll tell you, I've tried that years ago, probably 15 years ago. I was trying to work with the University of Washington to see if the Port of Port Angeles could provide wraparound services to businesses that were coming out of the University of Washington, where we could give them reduced rent rates and, you know, all these other services just to attract them to come to Clallam County. And
they had zero interest, none. And their thing was, well, what's your workforce there? Why would we go there? We're trying to improve Seattle. So, and we've got the workforce here and there's just not enough out there, that kind of thing. So I really kind of realized that we need to work with our existing community and try to improve our overall economy. And so, you know, talking to all sorts of businesses that were paying really well, Airflow is an example, HVAC companies, and across the board, a lot of different types of companies that pay that $26 an hour plus benefits. You know, they had openings. That is starting to slide now, much more so than a year or so ago. And now, and so what we really need is those good paying jobs for people that can get trained within 1 or 2 years, but you know, don't need that 4-year degree or 5, 10, 15 years of experience in a particular field. And so that's to improve our from the ground up. That's really where I feel like we need to focus. And this career tech education path, the vocational training path, that's really connected very strongly with our existing businesses that have good jobs available. Making those connections has been tough in the past. Frankly, school teachers were teaching and educators at the college, I felt like were teaching what they wanted to teach and how they wanted to teach it. And there wasn't that, and I don't know why the connections weren't happening, but they either didn't know them, they were siloed, they were not in that social circle, there wasn't the interconnectivity. But with the leadership today that we have, I found that there's so much interest in connecting folks and having those businesses. And you know, in the healthcare industry, healthcare is frankly in some ways easier to do that than in other industries because we have larger employers. You know, you've got, I could name 5 employers that have, you know, thousands of employees, and then you only have to reach out to the HR department of 5 employers. But in construction, we don't have a lot, you know, we don't have a 500-person company in construction. And a lot of times those construction businesses don't have an HR department that you can go work with. So it makes it more challenging, but there are so many opportunities available out there. So it just takes a lot of one-on-one appointments, going out there and meeting with them in person. You know, blast emails don't work. And you've got to create those relationships and make those introductions. And that takes time, but we're seeing great progress. I hope that answers your question, Dale. That's what I see is like how we're going to make an impact in our community, in our economy, is by connecting the people that we have. Yeah, we're recruiting, trying to recruit some companies. I've got a meeting later today with a company that is like the premier company that does CLT, cross-laminated timber, called Kalishnikov. They're out of Canada. But, you know, I think our odds of winning that are pretty low. They're looking at Idaho. They're looking at Utah and Colorado. In our state, we have a restriction on gift of public funds. Those states don't, so they can say, come to Utah, we'll give you 10 million bucks. And, you know, that is an absolute no-no in our state, which makes us a lot less competitive to recruit. But we have, you know, 18 acres at our waterfront, and we would love to see a really innovative, high technology company that could use our natural resources and partner with the Makah tribe and their Western hemlock, and then barge the completed units over to Victoria or over to Vancouver or Seattle. So, you know, we've got some things in our toolbox that we can offer, but you know, it is a real challenge, especially, and I feel like if we had a company that would be paying really good wages, I feel really confident that our partners like Dr. Ames and Mia and the folks at Peninsula College, they would create a customized, tailored training program that would meet those needs. But again, you always have to have the critical mass to be able to get those programs stood up. Does that answer your question, Dale?
Yes, thank you. And I want to add that I think the folks on this call, as well as many others, are building the foundation to make things like that happen down the road.
Yeah, yeah. I keep in contact with Senator Wellman pretty regularly, and we're planning for her to come back out to the peninsula again soon, because she wants to, she loves our area, and she'll be checking out the, you know, I'll be sure to set up a meeting for everybody so they can talk about where they are. And I sent her the article about Ms. Ramboni and her $1 million donation. So she was really excited about that.
There was a question on the timeline for the building. Just from Patricia, I believe. And what we're looking at right now is as we receive the donations, and we have what's called a long range facilities planning group that has been put together over the summer. And you know, I would just wave top this a little bit. I would think that sometime this winter we'll complete the design element for this building, you know, through the architectural firms that'll be used. Probably sometime, I think, my hope is that sometime spring we'll receive opportunity to do the groundbreaking ceremonies. You know, there's all kinds of processes you have to kind of go through in determining your timeline. You know, once we get through the design piece and really understand what that building's gonna look like in terms of its footprint and where it's located, I think that, you know, my hope is that sometime in spring we'll have a groundbreaking ceremony and we'll go from there.
All right. Well, hey, I see it's 9 o'clock. Ned and Regan and everybody, thanks so much for joining us today. It's such fun to be able to share some good news and some progress. Can't wait till we get to actually put students in there, both adults and kids, actually practicing these high technology, high skilled pathways so that they can get jobs, high paying jobs.
One thing I'd just like to add is that, Colleen, if I can get your list of folks who are on this call, I'd like to invite you to our General Advisory Committee meeting the first week of October. We're planning that right now. It'll be the first or second week of October. And that's our fall meeting. It's really important to have your voices in that meeting and to understand, you know, the updates, and to see that, and we're going to be giving a tour of all of our programs and show you some of the technology that we are currently importing into these programs. One of the cool things that we did last year was we created a student marketplace. We had a $50,000 grant, converted a classroom into a student store. And if you walk into that place, it's like you're walking into a store. Those students run it, they own it, and you know, they take care of it. And so I really want to showcase some of those to you, to see that, just so you can see that these just aren't words, not just a vision that's never going to be achieved, but that we're moving in the right direction, and the people who come around us are making that happen. And I really want to shout out again to Dale and Richard and Kay and just the entire team of EDC. A good partnership with Amber and her folks there at MPB. We got a lot of folks here that Matt Hewish and the city. We're just so thankful for their continued work with us, the college, Mia's team out of workforce development. Just really appreciate y'all.
Yeah. All right. Thanks so much, everyone. And I'll ask Mitch to get you that list. All right. Take care. Have a great day.